Welcome to the Strategy Sherpa Show, a series of organic discussions between hosts David Chavez and a variety of notable business leaders centered around their most significant failures and how they handled those challenges, so listeners can learn from their most teachable moments and apply the lessons to their organizations. Now, here's your host, David Chavez.
Everyone, this is David Chavez. This is the Strategy Sherpa Show, and we have a great guest in store for you. But really quick, before I introduce Charlie, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the cash webinar that I'm doing here on January 30th. And look, this is going to be a great webinar for business owners because I'm going to teach you how to teach your employees about cash. I think that a lot of times we don't get our employees engaged enough in helping us increase our cash flow. And we're going to be going through how to talk to them and helping them understand financial statements, and then how to understand how wasting just a few dollars doesn't cost the business just a few dollars. So, and we're going to be going through some of those details, but let's get into it. We have Charlie here today. So Charlie Davis, he owns a company called Moxy out of Louisiana, and we'll let you introduce Moxy to us a little bit, Charlie, and say hello to everybody.
Thanks, David. Well, man, you already got me excited about a cash day. Cash is critical. In fact, that's what Moxy does for businesses. We unlock the trap value that all small businesses have. Frankly, all businesses have it, right? Whether you're a Fortune 500 or a mom and pop company, that's what we do. We help businesses unlock the trap value. It's not so much opportunity costs as it is all the extra stuff that you can't sell, right? You've been in business for a long time. You know that it's either feast or famine, right? You either have too many customers or not enough, right? The airline is either empty or half empty, or it's overbooked. It is nearly impossible to have the exact amount of stuff that you want to sell. And thanks to the awesomeness of free market capitalism, if you ever did have exactly the right amount of stuff, all you would do is expand, right, and create more capacity. And so Moxy helps businesses sell their excess capacity. How we do it is really fascinating. So most people think of Moxy as a referral network on steroids. So we have about 3,000 businesses, mostly locally owned businesses across Louisiana, a few other states. And so when a new company joins our network, every business in our network, every member is hyper incentivized to change their buying habits and buy from our members. The basic idea, the real rule behind the system is any revenue you earn from our members needs to be spent back into the network, right? So it creates this massive loop where everybody starts earning more and more business. And to keep track of it all, we use Moxy dollars instead of US dollars. And so your pricing is the same, but instead of paying somebody cash, right, with your Visa card or regular traditional money, you can use Moxy dollars, which is in essence just an internal credit network that we manage behind the scenes. So as you can imagine, if you're going to spend $5,000 on an electrician and a painter building out a new office building, and instead you can save $5,000 cash because you can spend $5,000 Moxy, that's a hyper incentive for all the business owners to buy from electricians or painters inside of our network. And so the IRS actually incentivizes this. The federal government incentivizes this because if they didn't do it, businesses would just barter from each other under the table, right? So this direct barter, which is hard to manage, and there's no taxes. So our operation is completely above board, reportable to the government, but there's still lots of tax incentives, and it's why the government incentivizes. So it becomes this win-win scenario where every time a local business joins our network, the whole operation becomes more valuable. There's more people to sell to, there's more people to buy from, and people stick around, I think, for the community. There's just something special about being a network of hundreds or thousands of other small business owners that you can meet and get to know. And of course, iron sharpens iron, right? It's the nature of building a company. It's just really hard. I think it's much harder than most people realize. Even as an entrepreneur, I'm surprised how hard it is to build a business, right? There's always challenges. It's never boring. So it's phenomenal. I'm building Moxy. I've been working on this for several years now, and we're ecstatic. I mean, it's the honor of a lifetime to really roll this program out nationwide that can help so many people. They're working so hard to build their companies.
Are you getting ready to do it nationwide?
We are. So right now we're mostly in Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, and Tennessee. We finally raised some venture capital money at the end of last year.
Very good.
So it's giving us really the catalyst we need to start rapidly expanding. The first thing we're doing is investing heavily in the city of New Orleans to build a model. New Orleans is an international city people love to come to. There's Mardi Gras, the Super Bowl is coming next year. So we're going to build this incredible environment. So when you fly into New Orleans, right, at the airport, you can start using your Moxy credit card, to buy something in the airport. And then as you travel around town, you can just use Moxy and you get that experience. You can take it home with you as you start to grow, around the nation, then eventually around the world. But of course, our first goal, is just to blanket America.
Yeah. How did you come up with the name Moxy for the bartering system? I mean, when I looked at it, I sort of guessed, but I didn't want to say whether my guess was correct or not.
So I wanted Moxy to be like Kleenex. I wanted it to be the word that owns the category. If I say, give me a Kleenex, what I really mean is give me a little piece of tissue paper, right? But you know what I mean when I say Kleenex. And I grew up in the South, and if someone said, do you want a Coke? You would say yes. And then they would say, okay, well, what kind of Coke do you want? Because what that means is just a soft drink. And so we want Moxy to be like Uber, to be the verb, to be the noun, to be the word that people use when they're talking about barter. But Moxy's a special kind of barter. Direct barter is really challenging, right? You have to have kind of the same thing at the same time and the same amounts. It's challenging and it's hard to keep track of. So Moxy facilitates barter, but it's really carving out the space between traditional money and between barter. And what's unique about Moxy is we obsessively managed the value of our currency. So I know exactly how many Moxy dollars are in existence. I know how healthy they are. I know how to add more when we need them. And I know how to take them out of the network when that's important. So the name Moxy, I spent 3 months coming up with it. And we went through, this is no exaggeration, 1,500 different words.
Oh, I know coming up with a name is always challenging for everybody. It's 1,500. Wow.
Yeah, so I badgered every friend and family member I have until they would stop talking to me about it. My business partner was finally like, I don't care. Just pick a name. I don't care. But, I obsessed over it. Sometimes I'm an entrepreneur, right? Sometimes I obsess over things.
We obsess over everything.
Yeah, I needed a special name. And so I ended up running an online contest that generated 1,500 names. And none of those names was it.
Oh, boy.
But those names inspired me to think of Moxy. That's sort of how it came about. So Moxy is obviously money with an X factor, right? We just swapped the N for an X. But Moxy also stands for medium of exchange. And the core definition of money is a medium of exchange. And so there's a lot of depth that really behind the name Moxy.
Oh, that's very cool. I when I looked at it, I was going, that's an interesting name. So it's basically money without the N, and an X replaces it. Very interesting concept. I love the idea of what you're doing because I think all small businesses suffer from a little bit of excess capacity. And then also then we get up to the point where we have no capacity. Then we have to take that next step up the stairs, right? And so you're increasing your cost and you're creating more capacity. And I have that dead zone for a little while where I'm not really full of capacity and I really could use somebody using those services.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just sort of sitting there, right? And what you're saying is you're filling in that gap for me.
Exactly. I mean, whether you call it the S curve or the J curve, right? You know it if you're an operator, right? There's sweet spots in businesses and there are terrible spots where you're just the wrong size. You're too big or you're too small. But the market is messy, right? I mean, I think we've proved the efficient market theory does not work, right? So it's just inefficient. And part of the inefficiencies is really the nature of money. The US dollar is the reserve currency of the world, right? I could take a dollar and I could get my hair cut down the street, right? Or I could fly to Europe or South America and they would accept it. And so there are lots of times when you make buying decisions and the correct answer is just to hold on to your money, right?
Yes.
You don't buy the thing because you value money more. And so a business can't constantly know your value proposition, can't constantly change their prices. But if you use Moxy, it makes it easier. And so whenever two people do business with each other, right, really they're both becoming slightly wealthier. That's the nature of free market capitalism. And so by removing the cost of capital from the equation, we make it much easier for people to do transactions that otherwise never would have happened. And so when someone joins Moxy, they're not only getting a new customer, but that customer is going to buy more for them on a more frequent basis, right? So when our members go to a restaurant, they don't just have a meal, they get an appetizer and dessert and a bottle of wine, right? And then they leave a really big tip. And so the restaurant owner is happier because they sold more. But I think probably more importantly, their employees happier because they got a bigger tip. And so
Yeah.
Moxy just sort of like throwing gasoline on the fire, right? It makes everything burn a little bit hotter and better.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And I just love the concept. At first, when I heard about it, because you were introduced to me through our coach, Warren Sager, you and him have known each other for quite a while. You had met in EO in Louisiana, correct?
We did. Yeah. Warren is just an incredible guy, awesome family.
Most definitely.
So he doesn't brag about it, but he's helped so many businesses soar. I mean, it's just incredible what he's got a gift. He's got a special gift where he starts working with business owners, they start thriving. It's like almost everything he does goes well.
Well, he's got such a positive attitude about everything, and then also he's just such a great, kind person.
Yeah.
I tell him sometimes I wish I could add the amount of kindness you have in your heart, because he is just a special guy in that sense. So
Yeah, he's very, very giving. Yeah, he's very good.
yeah, very giving. So let's get into it a little bit, because what we do here on the Strategy Sherpa Show, and just to remind our listeners too, because it sounds like a negative when we introduce it into the radio show, because all of us business owners make really silly decisions sometime. And, armchair quarterbacking it's easy to see how silly the decision was, but we don't always see it in the moment when it's happening, right? In the moment, we thought we made the best decision in the world. And then we realized that, oh boy, I'm in trouble from this one. So, what we like to do is talk about those things, not to judge you in a bad way, but to listen to your wisdom that you gained from making the mistake, right? Because every single time we make a mistake in business, I mean, you're probably on your 5th iteration of Moxy, and I don't know, but it's at least that high of a number, right? Because you have to iterate and change it based on what the customer is saying to you. And so sometimes we're making decisions that don't end up being correct at all and actually cause us a problem. So I wanted you to share yours with us. What did you want to share with the audience?
You got it, David. And mistakes are a badge of honor, right? It's how you learn. When your staff first sent me that question, I thought, man, how am I going to pick just one? I mean, I've been
You're a true entrepreneur there.
Oh, I started my first company when I was in college, so almost 30 years ago, and it was a weekly newspaper, and it was incredible. I mean, overnight I owned the campus newspaper at a major university, and so it was a life-changing experience. But I made so many ridiculous mistakes. I mean, I ended up losing the entire newspaper just because I was an idiot. And when I tried to raise money for it, because I had no money at the time, literally no money. There was a payday lender near campus. And so I walked into a payday lender and I said, hey, I need to borrow $10,000 to start a company. And he said, well, I don't think we do that. And I said, well, that's not what your sign says. The sign outside says that you loan money. So let me go check. And he goes back behind the office and comes back and says, no, we don't do that. But can you imagine? That's where I started, right? I knew so little about capital. I tried to go to a payday lender, to borrow money from my first company. So picking one mistake is challenging.
Yeah.
The most recent thing that I've done that I sort of stepped into it was misunderstanding the level of knowledge that people have about the nature of money and how monetary networks work. And I keep making the mistake over and over. I'm getting much better about it, but it caused lots of problems. So barter, indirect barter using a currency has a lot of similarities to managing a money supply, sort of what the Federal Reserve does. And if you think about it, most people know how to use money, right? You know how to use your Visa card, but most people do not know where money comes from or how many US dollars are in existence or how many there should be. And so I just took a level of knowledge. I over expected people's understanding of how Moxy would work. And it's caused a lot. I think we're slowly working through it, but it's caused surprisingly high challenges, inside of our
Well, I'm gonna interrupt you right here and stop you for a brief interruption in commercials, but we'll be right back and we'll pick this back up, Charlie, because I loved how you said that at the beginning about people not understanding money well enough. So we'll be right back after this messages. This is a Strategy Sherpa Show with Charlie Davis from Moxy. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the Strategy Sherpa Show with David Chavez. Have a question for David or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Strategy Sherpa Show. This is David Chavez, and I have Charlie Davis with Moxy here with me. And he was talking right before the break, and I loved what you were saying. I started laughing inside when you were saying it, Charlie, because when I started my CPA firm, which is the largest business I started, grew, and sold thus far, I went to a bank to get money, right? Because I was just an ordinary guy. I didn't have rich parents. I had all those things against me, and I went to the bank, and I had about $100,000 to start the business, but I wanted to get a little bit of a cash reserve. No one would give me money, like even a line of credit. And I walked into one bank, and they actually laughed me out of the bank. And then I went to another bank, and the lady there gave me the line of credit. I was with that bank the whole time. The other bank, my best friend, one of my best friends from college, ended up becoming the CFO over time. And I ended up doing a lot of business with them, but I never gave them, I always gave them a hard time about denying me the line of credit when I started. So I appreciated that story. I'm sure a lot of people out there have those stories. So there's a lot of times money is just not available, like you were saying.
No, you're so right. And I'm laughing because in my experience, if you don't need money, people will fight to give it to you. I really struggled to find money, borrow money for years. And I never forget the first time banks started competing to loan me money. And I was fascinating and also infuriating because I didn't need it anymore. Right. It was like, it was too little, too late. And I ended up, saying yes to some of the credit lines just because I knew there'd be a day in the future I would need it and they wouldn't want to give it to me.
Right.
But somehow, banks are very conservative. And
I want to leverage your comment right there, because that's something for all business owners to really understand. If you're listening to this show, if you don't have two banking relationships with different banks, two different banks, and you're not building those relationships when you don't need money, you will not get money when you need money. So you need to build those relationships. I always would tell people, every quarter, every 6 months, you should take your banker to lunch. Take them to lunch and surprise them. And also build that relationship with them, because when it comes time for you needing the money and your financials don't show it, they will go to bat for you with that loan committee. And if they're not going to bat for you, then you're not getting that money.
Yeah, that's critical. You've got to have a relationship with your banker, right? It's like having a doctor when you're healthy. Like when you have an emergency is not the time to find a brand new doctor. Like you need someone that knows you and trusts you and cares about you. And bankers are people too. They may not have they have a low risk profile, right? It's the nature of banks. But you got to build those relationships so they're there when you need them. Absolutely. Yeah, in fact, that line of credit I got probably, 15 years ago is still with me, and sometimes it's critical. Even though I laughed at the time when I got it because I didn't need it at all.
Yeah, that's correct. So let's jump back in. So we are on the decision that you made, and you talked a little bit about it, but just summarize it again for everyone, and then we'll jump into the next question.
Yes. So the challenge we had recently is, over the last several years, is misunderstanding the knowledge that even smart people have. I'm not talking about somebody off the street. I'm just talking about successful business owners, like successful, well-educated people misunderstanding their understanding of the nature of money, and also not properly understanding incentives. Incentives run the world. I like to say that, relationships and stories and incentives power the entire world. And people tend sometimes to make decisions only what they think is in their short-term interest, not what's in their long-term interest, right? Sort of like if I said, David, what you really should do is have some carrots for lunch and go to the gym. You might say, that's great, but what I'm going to do is have a piece of chocolate cake and watch a movie, right? Even if you know what's in your long-term best interest, does not mean that you're going to do it. And business is about relationships and about trust. And so if you misunderstand the psychology or the understanding of the relationships or the incentives, or you think people value A and they really value B, it can cause a whole host of challenges.
So that was the issue. Then you misevaluated how the incentives were going to work and how people would respond to those incentives. Is that correct?
Exactly. And I have a tendency, one of my flaws as an entrepreneur is I see a problem. I'm attracted to large problems, which is not a problem. I just sort of love that. But I tend to go in and say, hey guys, guess what? I figured it out. Here's the solution. And people are like, well, I'm not even sure we agree on the problem yet. And I'm thinking, well, how could you not agree on the problem? Like this is really clearly this is a textbook problem. Doesn't everybody recognize the problem? But then I found out the hard way they don't, right? So you have to take the time to build relationships and get people to buy into the problem before they'll recognize the solution. Um, I've done it the hard way. And even though I'm aware of this flaw in my personality, I keep doing it. It's like I keep stubbing my toe over, and over again. Years ago, I had a lot of friends. This is probably 10 years ago, where I used to do a lot of political work. And so I was the state chair of Ron Paul's presidential campaign here in Louisiana, because I'm just a big libertarian, right? I like the idea of people making decisions, not the government. And a lot of my friends thought that was a terrible idea, that supporting Ron Paul was bad. And 5 or 8 years went by and they apologized to me and said, oh, I guess you were right on that one. But it sort of didn't really matter, right? Because at the time, people's incentives were differently. And the same thing is true in Moxy. We've got networks of 3,000 business owners who all want to build their business. And they might be a dentist or a plastic surgeon or a lawyer or a guy that cuts trees for a living. That does not mean they have a good understanding of monetary economics. And so, defining money is like defining love. It's hard.
That's
right?
great.
You can love ice cream and you can love your mom, but those are not the same things. And so is money credit? Is money gold? Right? Like you and I could spend a week debating on what the essence of money is. And so because of that, there's just a real misunderstanding of the nature of money and how the American dollar has changed over time. And so I built Moxy as something new, right? It's this, I call it dynamic reserve banking. It's the idea that businesses can trade with each other, and they'll do so if there's a high level of trust around the businesses they're trading with. And a key component is honest weights and measures, which means that the dollar itself, we can't play games with it, right? It has to stay strong, it has to stay valuable. And if you'll do that, the velocity increases and everybody's better off. And so business owners, I've learned, they can feel it, right? If you come to the Moxy network and you're like, wow, some of the top restaurants in town accept Moxy, right? You're like, oh, wow, this is a great lawyer, or this is a great orthodontist. You can feel that, but you can't really, measure the essence of the Moxy dollar, right? You don't have a way to see how strong it is mathematically. You can only sort of feel it qualitatively. And so my biggest mistake was misunderstanding sort of how to educate people and even how to talk through some of those tough issues that just make people, their eyes roll back in their head because they don't care, right? They just want to know that their Moxy credit card is going to work at great companies. They don't really want to understand how the sausage is made behind the scenes.
Right. And you wanted to explain to them how the sausage was made. And so it became a little too complicated for people to understand, is what I'm guessing.
Way too not even like close to too complicated. Whatever the next word is above that is what it became.
Yeah,
it's critically important.
As entrepreneurs, we're good at that, aren't we? We want to tell all the little details.
Yeah, you want to brag about how awesome your product is, and sometimes people just don't care. They love that it's awesome, and that's great, but they don't want to know why it's awesome.
Yep. So you made the decision. Help us understand exactly what happened. The mistake is you thought that they needed all this information that they didn't need.
Yeah, I have 4 kids, and we classically educate them. Like I love learning. I love the idea of learning new things. I'm just fascinated by it. But everybody's not wired that way. And so I thought the leaders in our network, people that are doing lots of volume on a regular basis, would be curious and would want to know how it works. And it was the opposite, right?
Yeah.
Even people who wanted to learn how it works didn't really have the foundational knowledge of money to begin with. And so it was, it probably would have been hard either way, but this specific topic is just really challenging, right? Money is really a credit network. What I manage behind the scenes at Moxy is credit between 3,000 business owners. And eventually it'll be credit between 30,000 business owners and then 300,000 business owners, right? And so I just wanted to show people what a great job we were doing with accountability and with transparency and why that was important. And so the lesson I learned is it's still important, right? There still has to be accountability and there still has to be transparency. I just have to figure out a different way to do it, right? There has
Yeah.
to be some other way. It can't be about educating folks. There's got to, and we're still trying to figure it out. How do we showcase the strength and the power of the Moxy dollar? Because it will be important one day, right? Today, there's 7 million Moxy dollars in existence, right? Moving across 3,000 businesses, but one day there'll be 700 million Moxy dollars. There's going to have to be some sort of systems and programs so people can have confidence in the strength of that dollar, because the higher the confidence, the more they're going to use it. Of course, we're not crypto. We do not compete in any way with the US dollar, right? We, in many ways, leverage the strength of the dollar against itself, right? Cash is king in every small business. Part of the glory of Moxy is helping people get more cash, not less cash, right? Cash is the lifeblood of small businesses. And so by using Moxy, helps them unpack their trap value, right? It's just the thing they've made they can't sell, or the excess capacity. That's what Moxy's all about. It's sort of like this missing piece that local economies really need. And I have people don't want to understand it.
Yeah, when you first described it, I was like, that's fascinating the way you were saying that, because using the untapped resources of my company, in other words, this part I'm not selling because my capacity may be too much and I just don't have enough customers right this minute. I really like that. Is that what you switched to? Because you were trying to give them all this information. And then, so the real problem is you started giving them all this information, and it didn't move the needle.
Yeah, a couple things. So we're switching to, and the word excess capacity is also too technical, right? That's not a word that people use in everyday life, right? But so the three things you get as a Moxy member is you get new revenue, you get better cash flow, and you get membership, an amazing business community. And so those are the main three benefits that people get when they join Moxy. And it's why our customers are so sticky, right? People, they start to obsess over Moxy, right? Our members will be members probably until they sell their businesses or move away or pass away.
Do a lot of members give discounts to other members just because they're using Moxy?
So that's the best part, is you don't have to give a discount, but because Moxy itself is so powerful, people will pay retail prices. It's because they're using Moxy dollars and saving their cash, right? Most small business owners have high price lines of credit if they can get it, right? Or sometimes credit cards. And so if I can give you another $5,000 to $10,000 a month and new revenue and new things you could buy, that's a game changer, because $5,000 or $10,000 doesn't sound like a lot of money to a company, right? But you have to think about that at the bottom line. Right? We're not just changing your revenue. We're changing the cash that falls all the way through the cost of goods sold, all the way to the bottom. Right. So it fundamentally feels different to small business owners. It feels magical and special to them once they join.
Well, I love how you said that, because that's sort of what my cash workshop is going to do on January 30th, is talk a little bit about that bottom line number, right? Because oftentimes employees think the top line number, you're taking it home, and that's not really what's being taken home, and they don't understand all the components that go into that part, but business owners do. And I love that you're solving some of that problem for them. So I love this all together. Let's come back and then we'll talk a little bit more about Moxy and where you took it from there after you realized this error that you made. But I think we have some clarity on what the three things are. So we're going to take a break and we'll be right back. This is the Strategy Sherpa Show, and I'm here with Charlie Davis with Moxy, and he is ready to take it nationwide. So we're getting a good interview right before he goes to the whole country on his product. So we'll be right back after this message.
Welcome back to the Strategy Sherpa Show with David Chavez. Have a question for David or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show.
Back on the air, and I'm here with Charlie Davis. My name is David Chavez, and we're sitting here talking to him about Moxy, and just having a good conversation around this all the way around. So you made this decision, you started marketing it, it's not resonating, you're not growing. So tell us your realization. And I'm sure at that point in time, you were a little frustrated, because all entrepreneurs think our decisions are going to make them $5 million. Every decision is going to make us $5 million. You're not making anything. And tell us what happened.
Yeah, so we learned the hard way, the classic idea of sell the benefits, not the features, obviously. But what was unique about Moxy is we wanted our existing members and leaders to understand why it was important to do things differently. And we really struggled there. And I could not figure out. So it was not so much about, adding new businesses in Moxy. Small business owners look to see who's already in the network, and if they recognize awesome brands, they'll sort of give it a chance, right? They're not really spending too much time trying to understand how Moxy works. They just want to see who else is using it. And so most of our growth comes from referral. Our challenge is, let's say you're selling Coke and Pepsi, right? You're just trying to convince somebody why Coke is better, why Pepsi's better. But I've got to convince somebody, what a soft drink is, right? It's a higher bar when you're developing a new category, like what Moxy is doing. And so we weren't so much trying to change our marketing. We've got amazing brand, awesome marketing. It was convincing the leadership inside the network how to manage the currency and how to make it better. And that is where the struggle happens. So really what finally worked is just perseverance. So many times small business owners, it's hard, right? And sometimes you quit and sometimes you don't. Maybe sometimes you should quit. I wouldn't say sometimes your business just has to be closed down, right? But in my scenario, I'm more likely to die than I am to quit building Moxy, significantly more likely. And so I just had to wait them out. And eventually slowly data build and relationships got built, and people sort of came around and started to realize how critically important it is to manage the currency and the way that we're doing it. So for example, there are trade exchanges and barter exchanges just about every city in the world, right? And I didn't invent this idea. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. And one of my businesses probably 15 years ago, I was a silent partner, the financial partner in a web development company. And when my business partner joined the local trade exchange, to be honest with you, I thought it was somewhere between silly and illegal. I was like, this is ridiculous. This is America. You can't be going around town with fake paper checks buying things. What in the world? But once I dug into it and realized, aha, you actually can, and the government incentivizes it. Just no one's ever done it at a large level. People have tried, they just failed. So I became obsessed with this idea of building this nationwide network that could help small businesses prosper. So I saw how much I benefited from it. And I saw what a difference it was making, in a local community. And frankly, it's just cool, right? What an awesome thing to get to do to build this network of eventually hundreds of thousands of small business owners. And the biggest lesson I kept learning is that people don't want to understand how it works. And it still fascinates. It breaks my head to even say that out loud. But they just don't want to. They just want to see that it works. They want to feel that it works. They don't really want to understand why it works.
That's your job.
Apparently, yeah. Apparently,
I'm a business owner. I just want to swipe my card, and I want to be a part of the cool club that comes with it, right? So a little bit of status there, and yeah, I'm here to spend Moxy dollars. Oh, great, welcome. So people understand that. And I loved what you said on the break. We were talking a little bit about it. Like when you go into a new area. You have to get 25 businesses on board with it before it starts to even work, right? So that's quite a challenge for you.
Yeah, the hardest part is getting the first 25 amazing companies to join Moxy, because there's not really a lot of value until there's a core group of businesses, a core group of great businesses, right? Moxy is not for businesses that are about to go out of business, right? We can help with your cash flow, but we're trying to take good businesses and make them great.
Great, yeah.
Right. We want, it's an honor to be inside of the Moxy network. We don't accept everybody.
Yeah.
It really has to be special.
And that ties into your purpose. When I saw your purpose, I loved it. It was it's unleash the world's potential, right? That's what you guys are trying to do in the world. And I love when I read that, I was going, this is great. And especially sort of define some of the problem you have. You were trying to give them all this information when really they just want the card and they want it to work and they want to be a part of the cool club that goes with it.
Exactly. I whip out a Moxy Gold card whenever I use it, and people love it. And they always ask me about it and talk to me about it, because the Moxy network is almost entirely either business owners, their family, or their employees, right? That have Moxy cards. Otherwise, you don't really have a way to get them yet. And so it's so much fun to use it, and it feels cool. It feels like you're part of a special club, but also you don't always get to meet the business owner when you go to a company. Right. When you're in the Moxy network and the owner's there, they're going to talk to you and you're going to build a relationship. Right. And so you start to really develop good relationships. And, the small business owners, I sort of hate the word small at times because it sounds derogatory. These locally owned businesses or small businesses, this is the backbone of the American economy. Like, this is where most of the jobs come from. This is where the little league sponsors come from. It is critical for a robust, healthy economy that we have a really robust and growing network of small business owners. America will not work otherwise.
Yeah, I don't think people understand that as well as they probably should. These large companies, they actually hurt the United States more than anything else. It's entrepreneurs that actually keep America's dream alive. And that's because these larger companies get more and more power and control of things, and they end up causing issues and driving economics. They end up driving the economy. They end up driving where we're going instead of a lot of people, a lot of small businesses driving that.
Mm-hmm.
So we really got to get back to entrepreneurialism. And, one of the fascinating things I found when I moved to Texas, no business license. You could go buy some business cards and start a business. And I just love that. It's because like in Nevada, where I was living before, it would cost you $2,000 to $3,000 to start a business. And if you're poor, you can't start a business.
Yeah.
In Texas, you could be poor and start a business tomorrow.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. The regulatory load and burden in our country has become dramatically high, and you get used to it, right? In Louisiana, once a year you have to pay $15 to have your brand new car checked out to get a sticker, right? The car's fine, right? Just that association has the power to pass that regulation. Famously in our state, they outlawed a small group of monks that were custom making caskets for people because they didn't have the right license. It's sort of like, at some point, and you want good regulation, right? You need fair, honest weights and measures. You need good regulation, but once it goes too far, it becomes a burden. It no longer helps you and protects you. It becomes a burden that works against you.
Right. And I hate regulations that try to keep competitors out, because then that allows big business to flourish, and it keeps entrepreneurs from starting new companies. So I love that you're saying this. And I love the whole Moxy thing, because it allows these small businesses to engage with each other and really take advantage of some of the benefits you're offering. So I just love what ended up happening. So how is it going as far as increasing your network right now? Is that increasing rapidly? Because after you fix this problem and started messaging different, my guess is you probably started taking off, which led to some of your new investors coming in.
We did. Last year was by far our best year ever. Nice. We're growing like gangbusters. We raised 1.2 million so far from phenomenal professional investors. One called Springtime Ventures out of Colorado, a group called Clock Tower out of California, and then a lot of local angel investors. Historically, most of the investment capital in Moxy has come from our members, right? The business owners themselves love it so much, they invested to build and grow the business, which is incredible when your customers will put up the money. But yeah, our growth, it's taking off. I mean, we have a community that's in Northeast Louisiana in Monroe, run by an amazing leader, Rick Green. And that community is doing more volume probably than some massive trade exchanges in big cities, just because when you build a high trust environment, with a strong dollar and people get to know each other and build good habits, it just starts to spin. And it's like the flywheel effect. It is really hard. Don't get me wrong. It is hard to get it going. It is super hard. But once you do, it just starts spinning faster and faster and faster. Right. And so we're building almost like Visa for small business owners is what we're doing.
Yeah, to give people a visualization, like it's the flywheel and turning the flywheel. Think of a merry-go-round when you were a kid, and it takes a lot of effort to get it to spin. And then after you get it spinning, you can just sit there and go like this, and it keeps on going. And that's what it's like starting a business. You have that same momentum. You have to run around in circles several times. So I love that you said that, and it really brings back that essence of what you're trying to do, is trying to match up the customer's needs. And tell me what's next for Moxy, because we just have a few moments left here. Like what's the next state that you're going into?
So the first thing we're doing is we are investing heavily in the city of New Orleans to build a showcase.
Yeah, you did say that.
To build a place where you can fly in and use your Moxy credit card, even at the airport, right? And from there, we're going to start to grow across the country. Right now, we have to do it sort of hand-to-hand combat and get the first 25 businesses in a city. But we're working to change that. We're working to shift from sales-led growth to product-led growth, where a business could just join anywhere in the country and start immediately using Moxy, because our network is so large, you can buy and sell things remotely. So we're not quite there yet. So the first thing we're doing is New Orleans, then a few more geographies near us, and then we're going to open up the floodgates and go nationwide.
Oh, that's very cool. I love that's I sort of can see that. And it's sort of cool because I do a lot of strategy work with people, and it sounds like you have a really clear understanding for the next 3 years what you're going to be focusing on. So,
well, one of the advantages of making mistakes in business, it gives you time to think about your strategy, right? And Warren also has been a huge part of helping us design this. Our business is unique enough where we can attract smarter people than we otherwise should be able to. Our team is really incredible. We're almost unfairly equipped in some ways to scale this to $1 billion business.
Yeah, well, Charlie, I've had a lot of guests on this show. I've been doing it since last July. It's been almost about a little over half a year now. And I will tell you, I've had a lot of guests, and I really have enjoyed listening to you. You could tell that you have entrepreneurism running through your blood. People ask me when I'm retiring, and you probably give them the same answer I do. What does that mean?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I just love doing business, and it sounds like you love it just as much. And it's always wonderful to talk to somebody like you. And thank you for sharing some of your wisdom with you and with us. And I just love this problem probably created 2 or 3 year gap for you. And I love how you're willing to come on and share it with other people, because, it's hard being a business owner, and it does feel like you're out there all by yourself quite often.
Absolutely, it does. I think it was, Peter Thiel famously said, being an entrepreneur is chewing on glass and staring into the abyss of death, right? There's moments. There's certainly some tough moments there, but I have learned that it's never as bad as you think it is. It's usually not as good as you think it is on the best days, and it's never as bad as you think it is on the worst days. You gotta be confident and clear headed, and just keep moving forward, and it almost always works out.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that wisdom. And hey, Charlie, thank you for coming on the show today. This is the Strategy Sherpa Show. We'll be right back in just a moment.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome back to the Strategy Sherpa Show with David Chavez. Have a question for David or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show.
Hey everyone, this is David Chavez. This is the Strategy Sherpa Show, and we have guests on our show that come and talk about a big mistake they've made, a decision they made that was just totally ended up being wrong. We don't do this to judge them or to share with them how bad they are. We do it to help other entrepreneurs understand that mistakes are part of the game of winning as an entrepreneur, and making mistakes help you grow your business. And so it's hard to understand that when you're in the middle of it. It's costing you a lot of money, but sharing some of the wisdom around what people did is just very valuable. I love just Charlie being on the show and sharing some of what he shared with us. He talked a little bit about making the decision that everyone needed to know about the details of Moxy and how it worked, because it's a barter exchange, right? And what he did is he kept on talking about that in most of his messaging. When people just wanted to have the status and also fill that capacity that they had that's left over in their business operations, and fill it with Moxy customers. And that helps the Moxy customer. It also helps the business. And also what it does too is once you have Moxy dollars, you're not spending Moxy dollars. So it's a way of just using some empty capacity in your business and turning it into cash, really. I loved how he said that. So the decision he made is having all the information out there of how Moxy worked when people just wanted to understand it and then for it to work. They didn't want all the details. And so he's been able to change his messaging, start to really scale the company. And now he's on a nationwide quest, just had his first round of venture dollars. A lot of you out there are in the same stage where you're trying to get to that next level of your business. And how do I get to the point where I could start to bring in some venture dollars or even go get a bank loan to do what I'm trying to do next? And a lot of that comes with success. So he's leveraging some of that success from that failure right now. And I would tell you the clarity he has now, he'll probably be able to scale his company quite a while before he runs into the next big issue that he's going to have. So kudos to Charlie for being on the show and sharing with us that valuable information. I wanted to talk a little bit about the webinar that I'm doing, because it's a pretty important webinar. And we're going to start offering this service in our firm to go in and train employees how to understand financial information and particularly cash. Because I think that a lot of employees, it's really funny when I'm talking to them at my clients right now, I'll ask them, what do you understand about the business and how it works and how it makes money? And they'll say, oh, they sell this pen for $100. And so they make $100 on every pen. And I'm like going, okay, but they have to pay you. They have to pay for the materials to make the pen. They have to pay for the time it takes to put it together. They have to pay for it when you destroy 100 pens. And so what ends up happening is they think that they made $100 on this pen when actually the business may have made $5 to $10 on it, and that's it. And what we do is help them understand why that is, and why when I mess this up on the manufacturing line, or let's say I'm a service provider, I have an air conditioning company and we forget a component when we go out to do a repair, and now I have to drive back to the office and back again, why the business probably lost money on that job, when employees often think that, oh, that's just a mistake. It's not a big deal. I just left it at the office. It's no big deal, but they don't understand all the other costs that go into that. So we're going to be going through some of that and how to teach your employees about it so they have a better understanding of cash. And that's on January 30th from 1 to 2 Central Time. And if you want to learn about the webinar, you can get on assuredstrategy.com/events, and you can find all the information there. And then also my partner, Ted Servata, is going to be doing a webinar on strategy and how it relates to operational effectiveness on February 6th. And this is a really important workshop that we're doing. And we have quite a few registrations for this right now. And I'm fascinated by that because this is such an important webinar that we're going to be doing. Oftentimes people get operational efficiency mixed up with strategy, and business strategy is not your new CRM. It's not your new ERP system. It's not all these things we often think it is. Those things are technology enablers that help you speed up your business, but it's not strategy. And so that mix up often comes into play and business owners misinterpret it. So he's going to help with that. That's on February 6th from 1 to 2 p.m. And again, you can get on assuredstrategy.com/events. Then Kane Peklovic, one of our coaches, will be doing Want More for Your Company, Make Changes Easier workshop in Phoenix. This is a whole day workshop. She's going to be going over the human aspects of change inside of your business. As a small business owner, you're in constant change. You have to understand how people react to change and how to help them get through the process of change. And this is what Kane will be doing. This is an all-day workshop. It's on February 15th in Phoenix, Arizona. And we would love for you to come and join us for the day. I may show up to this workshop. I'm not 100% sure yet, but I'm going to try to be there. But Kane will be there, and she's really a behavioral expert in understanding how people behave and act and do things. And she's going to help you understand some of those things. So you're going to walk away from this workshop with practical tools you can go back and use with your employees to help them through that change process. I just really appreciate you being listening to the show and supporting us here at the Strategy Sherpa Show. My name is David Chavez. I own a company called Assured Strategy. You can learn about us at assuredstrategy.com. We help companies get strategy into their company, help develop their leadership, and help them fix or create processes. And we'd love to hear from you. Please give us a shout. You can find all the information on the website. This is a Strategy Sherpa Show, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.